Hey there, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going back into Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens.
Ooh,
I have
fun.
a question that might seem simple on the surface but gets really complex the more you think about it.
I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Is history just like this random jumble of events, stuff happening all over the place?
Right.
Or is there some kind of direction to it all? Is it pushing us somehow toward a single global culture?
It's a question that's really been debated for centuries.
Oh, yeah.
And I think where Harari takes us with this is really interesting.
It makes me think about how we even define culture in the first place.
Exactly.
Because so often we think of cultures as these like fixed things, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what it means to be Samoan, that is what it means to be French, case closed.
Yeah, very static.
But Harari's like, hold on a second, it's not that simple.
He really challenges that, doesn't he? He says cultures are much more like bustling dance floors
Oh, I like that.
than these static museum exhibits.
Okay, so less about pinning down a single definition
Right.
and more about trying to understand what's going on within this constantly changing thing.
Exactly. And crucially, being shaped by both internal forces and external forces. So many things are mixing together.
Okay, I need an example. Give me something to wrap my head around this.
Let's take medieval Europe. You have this fascinating clash between, say, the ideals of chivalry and the teachings of Christianity.
Okay, so we're talking knights and castles and dot church on Sunday.
Exactly. Imagine a nobleman in the Middle Ages. He's in church, hearing sermons about humility, forgiveness, turning the other cheek, right? But that same evening, he's at a feast, boasting about his conquests, challenging rivals to duels.
I'm probably eating like a ton of meat. It's the Middle Ages.
Oh, laughs. Right. So it's this very different picture. And he's living by this code of honor, chivalry, that really glorifies strength and military prowess.
So which is it? That's a mixed message if I've ever heard one. How did people reconcile those two extremes?
And that's the thing. They didn't necessarily see it as a contradiction.
Really?
This tension, what we might call cognitive dissonance today, it wasn't a bug. It was a feature of their culture.
Okay, so explain that. How is being totally conflicted a good thing?
Well, it was a source of energy. It fueled things, like the Crusades, for example. Knights get to be holy warriors and fierce conquerors. Problem solved.
Wow, when you put it that way.
Or look at the stories of King Arthur. It's all there: piety, worldly power, the struggle to balance those impulses.
So instead of seeing it as hypocrisy, it's more like these contradictions are the engine of the whole thing.
I like that. Yeah, they drive change, they fuel creativity. And this isn't just some dusty history book stuff. We see it today.
Oh, for sure. I mean, pick a topic.
The struggle between individual freedom and equality.
Oh, that's a big one.
Oh.
Harari brings up some great examples.
Right. Dickens, for instance. He shows us the dark side of unchecked freedom, the poverty exploitation.
And then you have someone like Solzhenitsyn. He's coming from a very different place, but he's showing how forced equality can crush the individual spirit. Can't have that either.
Exactly. And it's a balance that every society in some way has to figure out.
I mean, look at politics. So much of the debate, whether it's healthcare, taxes, whatever, it comes down to how much individual liberty versus how much collective good. Right.
It's those fundamental questions that are always bubbling up.
So wait, are you saying that our super divided, often frustrating political arguments,
Yeah.
that's a sign of a healthy culture?
Laughs is a sign of a dynamic one.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Because imagine if everyone did agree.
World would be pretty boring.
Exactly. It's that friction, that discomfort. It makes us think critically, argue, debate.
And hopefully, somewhere in there, come up with new ideas.
That's how cultures evolve, right? You have to have that push and pull.
Like that old saying, iron sharpens iron, Or is it, the clash of ideas sparks innovation?
They both work.
But the point is, conflict and contradiction can be productive.
Absolutely. And this is so important when we try to understand other cultures.
Okay, so let's say I want to actually connect with the Muslim community here in my city.
Right.
I'm not going to get very far if I just focus on the obvious similarities, am I?
Not at all. The real insights, those aha moments that bridge divides, often come from exploring those areas where things are not settled, where the values are in tension, where people are wrestling with big questions. That's where things get really interesting.
So it's like look for the contradictions, not just the common ground.
Exactly. Because that's where you often find common ground you didn't even expect.
That's where the dance floor of culture is really moving.
That's the heart of it, yeah.
And that is a great place to stop for today. Okay, so cultures are like these dynamic things, always changing. But what about the bigger picture? If we zoom out, look at all of history,
Yeah.
can we actually say it's going in any particular direction? Or is it just like chaos? Just random stuff happening?
Well, that's a big question, right? And I think Harari would say it depends on how you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Your perspective matters a lot. If we're just looking at a few decades.
Or even a few centuries.
It's easy to get lost in the details. Like looking at a tree, you miss the whole forest.
Okay, so we need a bigger view.
Much bigger. He uses that great analogy of the spy satellite, remember?
Oh yeah, the cosmic one.
We need to be way out in space to see the real patterns.
All right, I'm putting on my astronaut helmet. What's this satellite showing us about history?
Well, first, imagine a world where entire continents, whole civilizations, have no idea anyone else even exists.
I mean, I know what happened, but it's still hard to imagine.
For thousands of years, that was the norm. Like, he uses that example of Tasmania.
That one's crazy.
An island off Australia, cut off for like 12,000 years.
So they had their own languages, beliefs, ways of life.
Totally unique.
And no one to tell them they were doing it wrong or differently? Or...
Exactly. It's like those alternate history stories, but real. And it wasn't just tiny islands either.
Yeah, weren't there bigger civilizations that were still surprisingly isolated?
Oh, for sure. Even places we think of as powerful, connected. It was relative back then.
Okay, I need an example. Hit me with one.
All right, how about this? 4th century CE. The Roman Empire is collapsing. Big deal, right?
Huge.
Meanwhile, over in Mesoamerica,
Modern-day Mexico, that area.
you've got the city of Teotihuacan at its peak.
Teotihuacan.
Chuckles, it's a mouthful. But basically, this massive, thriving city, huge population, maybe bigger than Rome even.
And these two huge things are happening on opposite sides of the world.
And they have zero impact on each other. It's wild. It's like they're on different planets.
It just blows my mind.
But that was more common than you'd think. So go back to, say, 10,000 DC. Harari figures there are thousands of these distinct human worlds. Thousands. Each one like its own universe.
Okay. Fast forward a bit. What about, like, 2000 BC? Still thousands.
Shrinking. Now we're talking hundreds, maybe a few thousand at most. Still a lot, but the trend is clear, right?
Things are connecting, even if it's slow.
And by 1450, even fewer.
All right, how many worlds are we down to by then?
Basically 5 major spheres of interaction. You've got the Afro-Eurasian zone, that's the big one, tons of back and forth there.
Right, like even way back then, people were traveling all over those continents, trading, fighting, the usual.
But outside that, Mesoamerica, the Andes, Australia, Oceania, largely separate.
So those 4 were like the last holdouts.
Pretty much.
But something tells me it doesn't stay that way forever.
If we could watch history on fast forward, it'd be like that Afro-Eurasian world just gradually expands, connecting, influencing, absorbing the others one by one.
Oh, the Aztecs, the Incas.
Gone. Europeans reached the Americas, Australia.
And core Tasmania.
The last one standing. Until 1803, anyway. Then it's British, part of that global network.
The rest independent culture just swallowed up.
It's kind of a sad story, but it really illustrates this trend that Harari argues is central to history.
This push towards everyone, everything being connected.
Exactly. And it's not just about land being conquered. It's deeper. Ideas, tech, ways of life. They spread, they mix, they create this global tapestry.
So here we are today, living in basically a single global culture.
In a lot of ways.
Even if it's incredibly diverse within that.
Oh, absolutely. No one's saying we're all becoming identical.
But are you saying we're all becoming the same? I don't know if I like that idea.
No, not the same. More like part of the same conversation.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Even if we're speaking different dialects, disagreeing passionately, we're all influenced by similar things now.
Huh. Even our arguments are happening within, like, a shared framework.
Exactly. Think about it, even conflict today. A lot of times it's using the same global platforms to debate, the same economic systems, even the same weapons to fight. Wild when you think about it.
It's like we might think we're coming from completely different places.
Yeah.
But we're all operating within this set of rules, influences, whether we realize it or not.
And that's Harari's point. It's easy to miss these big patterns.
Because we're so zoomed in on our own little corner of the world.
Right. So we think, oh, this food is authentically Italian, or that music is truly Indian.
But it's probably more complicated than that.
Always. Think about something like tomatoes.
Okay.
Staple of Italian food, right? Pizza, pasta sauce, all that. Where'd they come from?
Italy?
Nope. South America, originally. Or chilies, essential to a lot of Indian food, same story. the Americas.
I never even thought about it like that. But it makes sense. What we consider authentic is often a blend of stuff from all over.
And it's not just food, clothes, music, language. It's all borrowing, adapting, remixing.
So even something like, I don't know, a Native American tribe riding horses.
What about it?
That seems pretty authentic, doesn't it? Part of their culture for, like, ever.
We associate it with them strongly, yeah. But horses were brought over by Europeans. Before the Spanish, no horses in North America.
Wow. Okay, you just totally flipped my script.
The image of the Sioux warrior on horseback, the Apache, it's iconic, powerful. We see it as part of their identity.
But it's actually a product of globalization, not some ancient tradition.
Exactly. Makes you think twice about what authenticity even means, right?
It really does.
Yeah.
But before we go down that rabbit hole, we were talking about how we're all becoming part of this single global culture.
Right. And it's easy to think, oh, so does that mean we'll all be wearing the same clothes soon? Eating the same food?
Like some kind of sci-fi dystopia where everyone's the same.
Exactly. But Harari's point is much more nuanced than that.
Okay, so it's not just about empires and trade routes, right?
Yeah.
It's about ideas spreading, too.
Yes. And he points to this really pivotal moment around the first millennium BCE, where this radical new concept starts popping up: universal orders.
Universal. Like applying to everyone.
To all humans everywhere. It's a big shift from what came before.
Because before it was more like us and them, right?
Exactly. My tribe, your tribe, very separate ways of seeing the world. But now you start getting these systems that are meant to encompass everyone.
And the three big ones he talks about are money, empires, and universal religions.
And each of those, in its own way, tries to create a single system, a single set of rules.
Whether it's like a shared currency, or all living under one emperor, or all believing the same thing about the universe.
Exactly. A very different way of organizing humans.
But I mean, let's be real. Out of those three, money has been the most successful at uniting people, hasn't it?
It's hard to argue with that.
People who hate each other's guts, who can't agree on anything else, can still agree on the value of a dollar. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
It speaks to how adaptable money is, right? Flows across borders, doesn't care about your religion or your politics.
So is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
Are we all just being subtly controlled by the invisible hand of the market?
That's the question. And I don't know if Harari has the answer, but he definitely makes us think about it in a new way.
For sure. It's kind of a mind-blowing thought, right? That even as we strive for individuality, for preserving our cultures,
there are these forces that are way bigger than any one of us pushing us together.
And have been for a really, really long time.
Exactly.
Wow, listener, we have covered so much ground today.
From those medieval knights trying to balance their swords and their souls,
to isolated Tasmania, completely cut off from the world.
To the power of a dollar to connect people who might otherwise never see eye to eye.
And through it all, this question: what does it mean to be part of a global culture? And where do we go from here?
And if there's one thing Harari wants us to do, it's to keep asking those big, hard questions.
Not just accepting things at face value, but really digging deep.
And maybe even having some fun with it along the way.
Absolutely. So listener, until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.